Hi, Jim Roddy here from the RSPA, jumping in before today's pod to make two announcements. First, this is our final podcast before RSPA hosts RetailNOW 2024, the Retail Technology Channel's #1 trade show, education conference, and networking event, scheduled for July 28th through 30th, back on the Strip in Las Vegas at the Paris Hotel. The second announcement is to remind you that pre-registration is closing soon for that show, and registrations are trending well ahead of where we were last year. So with an expected 1,600 or more attendees this year, RetailNOW is the place for extreme industry connectivity. Across just 48 hours, you'll meet new partners and new solution providers who can accelerate the success of your business. If you're serious about the Retail IT channel, you have to attend RetailNOW 2024, again, July 28th through 30th in Las Vegas. RetailNOW is where the industry meets. For all the details, visit the RetailNOW website today at gorspa.org/RetailNOW. Again, gorspa.org/RetailNOW. Enjoy this episode, and I hope to see you in Las Vegas at RetailNOW. Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a special episode of the pod where we're going to cover two important topics. So leadership is going to be one topic for sure. That's been our theme all year long. But first, we're going to preview a RetailNOW 2024 breakout session. If you're not familiar with RetailNOW, it's the Retail IT channel's #1 trade show, education conference, and networking event set for July 20th through 30th at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. So RetailNOW is going to feature 5 education tracks and more than 20 education sessions, including the one that we'll discuss today. Elevate and Innovate, essential tools for empowering your retail technology solution business. And our guest will be one of the panelists for that session. Please welcome the Director of Supplier Services for ScanSource, Heather Philpott. Hey, thanks for joining us today, Heather.
Hi, Jim. Thanks so much for having me.
It's always a pleasure to connect with you, and it's nice that we can do it for the first time here on the podcast. So you and I go back a few years, right? We've crossed paths at these events, industry events, ScanSource events, other events for several years. But help our listeners and viewers get to better know you before we talk about technology and leadership. Tell us about your background, your career path, and what your role is today at ScanSource. And you were there before, at POS Portal before ScanSource made that acquisition. So help folks get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah. So my background is in marketing, and so that's actually how I got into the channel business. But my role prior to that is pretty relevant and interesting. I was working for a nonprofit that was what they call a PBID, so it's a property-based improvement district, and those areas are usually urban cores filled with retail, restaurant, hospitality businesses. And so I was working in marketing for that organization, doing events and marketing that drove consumers to shop or dine or eat in those areas. And so I thought I'd be a nonprofit forever. I'd worked for a handful of their nonprofits, and then I got a call from POS Portal. I thought, oh, I'll check out this company, and here we are 10 years later, still doing payments. And so I went over to POS Portal, focusing on marketing the payments business, and then right around COVID time, our COO at the time asked me if I would be interested in a business operations role, and I said, no way, I'm going to do marketing for life. And he kind of pushed me to step out of my comfort zone, and so I did that role, driving cross-functional projects, championing profitability and ways to do long-term organizational plans, and focused on really growing our business in a scalable manner. And so I really like that role. It allowed me to work with a lot of different departments, a lot of different leaders. And I grew a lot doing that, because obviously it's a very different role than marketing. And then a year ago, ScanSource and POS Portal tried to bring some of their teams together more, and so there was a need for a supplier services director to oversee all of the payments suppliers within both POS Portal's legacy payments business and ScanSource's payments business. And so now my team oversees all the supplier relationships and the day-to-day management of each of those suppliers, and growing our partnerships, strengthening our growth areas, and driving any initiatives that we can jointly do together.
Very nice. And you said you'd never leave the nonprofit sector, you'd never leave marketing, and here you are in terms of where you are today. I guess that's a life lesson for, we're talking about, we've had some folks who've been in leadership roles for, 40, 50 years on this podcast. You're early on in your leadership role. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I guess there's kind of a lesson there in terms of, right, follow the opportunities that are in front of you, because your perfect plans won't align with how the world is going to look or your world is going to look 5 or 10 years from now. Is that kind of how you see it? You just kind of have to follow whatever opportunities are presented to you.
Definitely. I mean, I think being afraid to step out of your comfort zone and being okay with being uncomfortable is probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. And trusting the people around you, both in my current role and in the business operations role. Someone else saw, like, you have an act or you have a skill set that we can leverage here. And even though I didn't see that in myself, I was trusting that they knew something that maybe I needed to grow on or learn on.
Very nice. I like it. And just so everybody knows, before we move on in the interview, Heather does have the title of Director of Supplier Services. She also has another title. She was named to the RSPA Next Gen 40 Under 40 Rising Stars in 2023 for 2023-2024. So congratulations on that. And again, that's another area where you and I have crossed paths. So we're going to see each other at RetailNOW. So let's talk about that session a little bit. So the session we mentioned, it's going to cover strategies across 4 areas. So technology expansion, digital marketing mastery, revenue diversification, and financial tools for success. So let's dive into like 1 or 2 of those today. Which one or 1 or 2 would you want to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, I think technology expansion drives to revenue diversification. And so I think that's a good area to chat about.
Great. So when you think technology expansion, like what would you recommend to the VARs and the ISVs that you work with inside the ScanSource ecosystem? What do you share with them? What are you seeing that the successful folks do?
Yeah, I see the most successful people building on their foundation or their niche or their vertical that they focused on and adding to that. Technology is moving fast, and it's our job to keep up with it and leverage the people around us to keep up with it. And even when it's scary, just like I didn't want to take on a new role, sometimes businesses don't want to expand or maybe jump into a new technology suite because they don't have the experience or the expertise there. But that's definitely where your distribution partners, your supplier partners, organizations like the RSPA can really help the channel expand what they're giving to their customers.
Got it. And so it's kind of like you don't have to go it alone. It doesn't have to be just you figuring out how does AI work or how does online ordering or anything of that nature.
Yeah, leverage the people. And one of the things I love about organizations like this is, and or even when you go to events like a ScanSource partner event or one of the other partner events out in the industry, is our channel partners aren't afraid to share their experiences with each other. And so if it's not the people that you are working with, it's the people around you can actually help influence maybe ways to go about it.
Yeah, that's one of the more surprising things. So we see it in the RSPA, and I guess you see it in the ScanSource ecosystem as well, where resellers are happy to help each other, software developers happy to help each other as well in terms of how you can add these, ancillary technologies, and oftentimes how they end up working together, and they both end up getting more deals than maybe they had in the past. Is that something that you've seen as well on the ScanSource side?
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to lose out on business because you can't do something. So it's almost better to bring in that additional partner who can service your customer and help support you than for you to just not offer it at all. And then they go to someone else who can do it all.
Great. All right. So that ties in with revenue diversification. And I guess, spoiler alert, I'm planning the RSPA State of the Industry. And one of the 8 macro trends that I'm talking about, and we see this in our successful VAR and ISV members, is them diversifying revenue. I won't get into all the stats from our KPI study to get into that. But what would be your take? What have you seen from a revenue diversification standpoint?
Yeah, I think from the traditional VAR side of the business, adding recurring, a lot of the traditional business was pay up front and then hope that your customers want to add more big purchases. By establishing a recurring revenue stream, whether for services or programs you already offer, or maybe additional services. Maybe you're selling technology and you want to add payments as a recurring revenue, or you want to add some sort of services as a recurring revenue. I think that's a big area of growth for the traditional business. On the ISV side, on the flip side, they're always been doing recurring revenue. And so for them, maybe it's finding some upfront streams or ways to get revenue kind of to build their base upfront and then the recurring revenue. So I think both sides of the channel can learn from each other.
Great. And again, you grew up more in the POS portal part of the world. So for folks who don't know, that was, payments, right? Then when you had the acquisition with ScanSource, it went and broadened it out. What can you say to resellers in terms of from a payments, is that revenue diversification? Is there other payment revenue that they can be getting? Or is it just, hey, not just payments, but you've got to add other things as well? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think both ways. I think payments is a great way to get into recurring revenue, but I also believe that services are what make you sticky, what make you separate yourself from other partners. And even if you can't deliver that service, maybe it's white labeling a program that maybe your supplier offers or your distribution partner offers, but it gives you a reason to always be able to call back and talk to your partner about how their business is going because you're offering that ongoing service to them.
Great. And then can you talk about, I guess, emphasizing the lean on your distributor, lean on your vendor partners to help you out? I guess, what are some of the things that you see in that regard and how you've helped some VARs over your, 10-year career?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we've been very successful at, and I see a lot of our supplier partners be really successful at enabling our VARs in, is like reverse logistics. So when you think of spare in the air or advance exchange or getting that device back on the counter as quickly as possible, often that's hard for a partner to support, especially if you service a region that's across multiple states or multiple geographies. And so leveraging your partner's scale to do that, to get that device fixed back on the countertop and or replaced before it's even fixed is a great program that you can leverage your partners, both supplier and distribution for.
Great. And that also ties with another point I'm going to bring up on stage at RetailNOW is the one big success that we see of a differentiator among our VAR and ISV members, the most successful ones is extreme personal customer service, not just good customer service or okay customer service or fine customer service, like extremely personal and really hitting it in that degree. And that kind of sounds like what you're talking about, where it's not just leaning on your distributors and your supplier partners in order to expand technology or get into different lines of revenue. They can make you a better customer, so they can help you provide better customer service as well, and instead of just having to do stuff online.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things that kind of as I've dug into the VAR space, recurring revenue really relies on having good customer service. And that's the one thing that I think VARs really pride themselves on is having a great relationship and one-on-one service to their partners. And so recurring revenue just makes sense because you're already doing the work that drives to someone wanting to pay that monthly bill. And so I think it's a perfect match for VARs, and we just got to help enable it.
Excellent. Well, let's pause here to let our listeners and viewers know about the RSPA. The Retail Solution Providers Association is North America's largest community of retail technology VARs, software providers, vendors, and distributors. To accelerate your success through an RSPA membership, email membership@gorspa.org. We also want to thank our sponsors who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our platinum sponsor is Blue Star. Our gold sponsors are CoCard, Epson, Heartland, and an organization Heather is slightly familiar with, ScanSource. Finally, as we mentioned at the outset, registration is now open for RetailNOW 2024, the Retail IT Channel's #1 trade show, education, conference, and networking event. This year's event is set for July 20th through 30th at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. For more information, visit gorspa.org/RetailNOW. RetailNOW is where the industry meets. I'm actually going to miss reading that because this is the last podcast that we're doing before we all head to Vegas for RetailNOW. And I guess we do have to share with folks, a lot of when people think of ScanSource, they think of Greenville, but talk about where you're located, Heather.
Yeah, I'm located in Sacramento, California. This is the headquarters of POS Portal, or the payments business, and we have our corporate office as well as one of our warehouses located in Sacramento. And so for us, it's a nice little quick journey over to Vegas. And ironically enough, the Paris RSPA was the year we were acquired. And so there's a little bit of a homecoming here for all of us because we got to meet each other, the ScanSource and Portal team at that show.
So would that have been 2017? Is
Yep.
that all right?
Yep.
Wow,
So,
I can't believe it's been that long. Time flies.
I know. I know. We all feel that way too. Good stuff
One,
happens fast, right?
yes, it does. Though I'm thinking you will recognize the Paris because it still has that very much French flair to it, but it's all newly renovated, all the rooms and things like that since we were last there. Again, it's been 7 years. The RSPA had a streak of like 14 out of 15 years was in either Vegas or like 1 year in Reno. So yeah, we're planning on, this is a little scoop for everybody. This will be the first of 5 straight years at least that we're going to be in Vegas. So you won't have to make that cross-country trip to Orlando for RetailNOW for quite a while. So.
Well, I appreciate that, Jim. Last year was a lot of Orlando. It seemed like everyone thought Orlando was the place to be last year. So my counterparts
Yes.
won't feel the same way. They're going to have to make the journey out west. So
That's exactly right. Yeah, everybody in Greenville's like, oh no, right? We got to go cross country for a few years. But yeah, it's folks on the West Coast will be happy. And quite frankly, our membership loves going to Vegas, especially the resellers and the ISVs. And that's why, again, as I mentioned, our registration is trending ahead of where it was from a reseller count because that's one of the many reasons why they do. So, okay, so we talked personally about where you're physically located. Talk to us about your personal leadership journey. Like, what's your leadership experience? What's your supervisory experience?
yeah, I think I've probably had a lot of unknown leadership experience throughout my career, or at least that's what lots of people around me tell me. But this role, this Director of Supplier Services role, is actually my first supervisor role that I've had. I've probably organically supervised some of my team in the past, but this is the first official one I've had. I've held many leadership roles throughout my career. This last role that I had, the business operations role, was really the hardest and most rewarding leadership role I had. I had to navigate working with a lot of different departments, different leaders. It was very cross-functional. And so I had to build trust, which I think is one of the number one keys in leadership, with people willing to let me go and mess with their kitchen per se. And so that was a really great leadership growth area for me. We also, I was in that role when we all went home for what would be 2 weeks remote. And we started that next Friday an all hands meeting that I co-hosted with our COO. And so for every Friday for 3 years, I hosted that session, which if you are a leader out there who has done remote leading, it is very hard to know if they actually think you're funny or entertaining or pretty much anything but just talking to a screen. And so I think that was a really good way to find how to connect and relate with the team in a way that I probably hadn't before that.
Yes, true. You don't realize until you miss it, the nonverbal cues that you're able to get from people, or just that everybody's on mute. You even miss out on the verbal part of it as well. So I do have to ask you this. So I've always shared with folks, like, you have this general progression, good individual performer, then you become a supervisor, then you're like leading a department, and then you do the interdepartmental, which is the most difficult of all. It seems like you went from step 1 to step 4, and now you're doing step 2 as well, I guess. Can you talk, I guess let's talk first about crossing the chasm from individual contributor to being a supervisor at ScanSource. So what's been the biggest challenge with that? And then we'll talk about the interdepartmental next.
Yeah, I think letting go. I've always believed that leveraging the people around you is super important. And every role I've had the opportunity to leverage the talented people around me. But it's always been used in a way that I'm leveraging expertise that's different than my own. And so as a supervisor, a lot of the expertise is the same. And the work that my team is doing is work that I once did. And so I think the biggest challenge has been like, they got this, like, let them do it. And I'm a better leader when I have time to coach them or to walk them through maybe how I would solve something versus just doing it myself. And then I don't have time to coach my team. And so I think that that's been the biggest the biggest challenge and rewarding part of supervisory work.
Right, because you have that muscle memory, like, ooh, I know exactly what I would do here, but then you have to let somebody else do it the way that they would do it to a degree. Not that they can do whatever they darn well please, but you also don't want them just trying to mimic you in terms
Exactly.
of what they do.
Yeah.
Talk about having hard conversations
Ooh.
with folks. Now that you're a supervisor, that was always, maybe this is more of a me, like a self-confession. That was always the most difficult part for me is, having to call somebody out. And again, not that it has to be a yelling or mean kind of thing. And it could even seem like a very small thing, but as a supervisor, you've never done it before and you're doing it. Can you talk about those things, those hard conversations, whether it's a disagreement or I think we need to do something differently, or just even asking the tough questions of being skeptical? Talk about that as a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a people pleaser, and so it is definitely probably similar trait to you, Jim. It's a hard task to do, but I think navigating and figuring out the way people tick has been really helpful. Figuring out how I can approach my different personalities on my team to help them through those hard conversations has been really helpful. One of the things that's been really interesting, you talked about how I kind of went a little backwards or a little wonky on my journey into my career. I was used to having those hard conversations with people who were my peers or often people above me. And so delivering direct conversations or hard conversations frankly seemed easier that way than it does to my employee, because I don't want my employees to feel unempowered by me. And so that's been a unique thing to learn to do too, and work through. And so I think every conversation you learn a little bit more and you keep doing it, and hopefully someday it's a little more natural and not as uncomfortable for me.
Talk about, you said, so thank you for that answer, Heather. Can you talk about, you said, learning the way people tick? I guess, can you dive a little bit more into that? Was like an actual science experiment? Did you have people take actual tests? I mean, some employers do that, or they have that to draw from. Or was it reviewing their employee file, or was it having just really deeper conversations with them? I guess, what went into that formula of helping you understand how people tick?
Yeah, I guess all of the above. ScanSource does they have a learning development department that has done some great research and kind of personality trait things that we've done throughout our careers that we can look into. But for me, it was taking those tests personally, seeing how I react as a manager, and then based on what I saw on the results, okay, well, my employee probably fits into this category and this other employee fits into this category. And then how should I navigate with them? One of the things that I found really interesting during this, and sorry if this is a tangent, but I like to work in teams. I learned that my personality is all about teamwork and driving change together and diving into it and getting resolution as a group. And I have an employee who isn't that way. And I realized that the way that I was driving them to do work was with me. And that actually like made them feel less powerful. Where I was approaching it as, hey, let's do this together. We're going to solve it. They were like, she doesn't trust me. And so that's been an interesting thing, is learning the way they tick or the way they're empowered to do work is different for each person on my team, and that's different than even what I like. So that's been a really interesting thing to go through over the last year.
I still remember back, so thank you for that. Back in my days at Jameson Publishing, we had a standout individual sales rep. We're moving into a sales management role. And I remember a veteran sales manager said to him, keep this in mind, not everybody works like you do. So if you think you're going to go and manage 5 of you, that's not what it is. And so you're going to realize either people have some areas that are stronger than where you're strong, or there are things that you just think are common sense. Like, it's so simple, it's so easy. And you've got your whole team who's like, that's really hard. And you almost like can't even comprehend that it's hard. But like you said, it's understanding and meeting people where they are and then giving them what they need. Like you said, you're a people pleaser. I know that can make it difficult to be a supervisor, but I think that's almost a better thing, because if you're like, I hate people, right? That's going to be a problem, because that's really what the job is working through people, working with people and meeting them where they are. Can you talk about trust? Because trust is such an important thing. Can you talk about that path. Was it a whole bunch of people you'd worked with already, so it's just a matter of them trusting you to be a good supervisor in that role, or was it learning people who you'd never maybe worked with before? Can you talk about that part of the journey?
50-50. So in this current role, I have people who are from the legacy POS portal business, and I have folks who are from the legacy ScanSource business. And so we both, on both sides, there's learning to be done because the POS portal business has to learn the systems and the technology and the processes that are at ScanSource. And the ScanSource folks are learning more about the payments business or the payments practice as a whole. And so I think we've had to learn a lot to trust each other and what our special sauce is and what our expertise is, and train each other on that. I've also kind of given some autonomy to my team to train each other versus me being in there being the one who has to drive all of it. And I think that that's been really great for them to build trust and rapport with each other. And so when one of them's out, they know the other one has their back. And so I think, people buy from people, people work great for people that they like. And so I think that, trust or relationships are like the base of everything that we do in this channel.
Amen. Amen. And I'm making a note. I'm going to send you notes on 2 books that I've read. So one I actually just finished called Everybody Matters. I'm making this offer to everybody who's listening to this podcast as well. Email me at jroddy@gorspa.org and I'll send these book notes to you as well. The one book is called Everybody Matters. Jeremy Julian from CBF North Star recommended it to me. It just talks about how our number one role is to really value the people, who we're working with. Like that's more important than making the numbers or anything else. And then another one is called Radical Trust. I don't even know how to buy it anymore. I didn't even buy it. I found it when we were cleaning out the RSPA office like a year and a half ago, whenever we went all virtual, and just found a copy of them like, hey, free book. I thought this thing could be terrible. And it's phenomenal. And just talking about how you build trust among people. So Heather, I'll send that to you. And again, anybody who emails me or LinkedIn message me or Twitter, direct message me, whatever, I'm happy to send those notes to you as well. So reading is one way that I improve myself as a leader or strive to improve myself as a leader. Heather, what are some things that you do today to help you build your leadership skills?
Yeah. I am 100% a people watcher. And so in life and in business, that's I think probably the number one way that I grow and learn. And so it's observing and watching other leaders, whether they be my colleagues or my channel peers or public figures, watching people do great things and watching people do not so great things have been a really important for the way that I carry myself and the way that I conduct myself with my team and my colleagues and people in the channel. And I just think, I think there's a saying like, imitation is the best form of flattery. I agree. There's leaders who I want to be exactly like in the boardroom, and there's leaders that I want to be nothing like in the boardroom. And I think that that's been really important for me to be able to observe other people and mimic their behavior.
And so what do you do with that? Like, is it all just in your head? Do you take notes, or is just there are some things that stick with you? Like, how do you want to have your own personality? But I agree with you. There's nothing wrong with looking at other people and going like, yeah, that's how I'd like to be able to live up to it with my own flair. I guess, what do you do with that data and how quickly do you apply it, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I think in all sorts of ways. Some of it is definitely in my brain, and maybe I even hold people in my brain in a different way that they really are. But I also always taking notes, always I'm trying to like question things as well. So if I go to a meeting and I see a leader, maybe I work with a colleague named Joe VML who he's worked in the payments business forever, and I'll go to meetings and I'll watch him navigate things, and then afterwards I'll question him on it. Like, explain to me why you navigated it this way. Explain to me what you would do with that insight that you questioned in that meeting. And so I think the dialogue post watching it as well helps a lot for me.
Got it. Yeah, I learned a lot, especially early on in my career, where you would see things that you would say, that doesn't ring right to me. Then you got to see the aftermath of it, and you'd be like, oh, don't do that at all. Like my first job, I worked for a semi-pro basketball team. There was a player who was cut. he wanted his check because he's like, I know if I go home, you guys aren't going to pay me my money. He wanted to meet the general manager. The general manager's across the hallway. We're like, he's on the phone. He'll be with you in a second. Well, the GM went and ducked out the back door. And so we as a staff were left with this player who was like, I am not leaving town. He's flipping out on us. And I'm like, make a note. Don't be a coward, right? Because if you're a coward, you might get away with it for a day. But man, talk about the team, the staff that we had really losing respect for that general manager. I mean, that was back, Christ's sakes, 34 years ago, and it's still stuck in my head. So yeah, some of those things they never leave you. So I guess that was a leader I did not look up to. But can you talk about some of the leaders that you look up to as mentors, folks who've helped shape your leadership approach? Like, what are some of the things that they've said or done that have had a lasting impact on you? And by all means, please do the positive aspect of it. I just did the negative aspect of it, of somebody who I refuse to name. But who are some folks, or who are some individuals, and what lessons have they taught you?
Yeah, I think, I will just say this, the legacy POS portal business, the ScanSource business, this channel, my supplier partners, there's so many people that I could latch onto and want to learn from, because this industry is just filled with talent. And so I am thankful that I thought I needed to just practice my interview skills and go to this interview, and here I am still in this channel when I never thought I would be in a for-profit business. But I think two people, ironically, are two people who have been my bosses. Brenda McCurry is my current boss, and unofficially has been a mentor since the RSPA 2017 at the Paris Hotel. Brenda, from the moment I met her, was just so polished and professional, both aesthetically, like she always just looked like she was ready to be at the business table, but she is a powerhouse and a leader and a really good support system. Like, she shows me that being there for your people is the most important thing every day. Like, she makes sure we feel protected and supported in any meeting, internal or external. And she just has so much channel experience that she can navigate. There's been meetings where I'm like, well, how are we going to say that? And then she does it and made it seem so part of the conversation and so polished and smooth. So I don't know if I've ever told Brenda this story, so now I might be a little bit embarrassed after she sees this, but I still remember exactly what she was wearing the day I met her. And so she just has always just been a good leader from another female in the IT channel.
Excellent. Very nice. Yeah, Brenda's great. Yeah, she actually serves as an advisor on the RSPA board for a period of time when we were doing the whole vendor reseller transition thing. So yeah, Brenda's fabulous. So great. So Brenda's one. Who's another?
Yeah, and then in the same stroke of being amazing with people, but Scott Agatep, the COO of POS Portal, he's now with Infinicept. And he was my boss during the business operations role that I held at ScanSource, but we worked together for many years prior to that. Scott is just not afraid to do anything. He will take on any challenge. He will make the risky decision. He will throw the noodle at the wall, whatever it is. He's authentic when he does it, and he just really pushed me to trust in my gut and trust in the decisions. Obviously, the data always helps you and it backs it, but there's something that you get a feeling, go find the data to help you deliver that feeling or deliver that decision that you have. And if you have confidence in the decisions that you're making, the people around you will follow you. And I've always just found that very inspiring, that mentality that he's had.
Yeah, and so people go for it, do your best, take a shot. But until you see somebody do it and how they navigate all the nuances of it, and even when they stub their toe, how they recover from it or how they succeed, that's what it sounds like you got out of Scott in terms of it gives you the confidence to go give something a shot and try it and test it and measure and adapt.
Yeah, I actually I never realized how risk adverse people were until I got into the cross-functional part of my job. And I was always like, just make the decision. But I think it's scary. And so it's nice to see a leader who stands by it and we'll carry that decision all the way through, and or be able to throw the towel in and say, hey, it didn't work, and this is why we didn't work. We're going to learn from it, but we're going to try the next thing. And I think sometimes you hear the rah, or you hear the people say, go do this, and then they're out. I don't think either of these leaders are like that. They're right there with you in the trenches.
Yes. Excellent. Yeah. Brenda and Scott, I'm glad they've had a positive influence on you. And again, not to blow smoke at the ScanSource team, but I've been, working with ScanSource since 1998. And a lot of those same folks, right, have been there, over a long period of time, and have a lot of core principles that guide them, right? It's hiring good people, but everybody has that same mission and the same principles. Can you talk about either those ScanSource principles or maybe some of your guiding philosophies or principles as a leader? What are some things that are top of mind for you as a leader, as a supervisor?
Yeah, I think I've probably hit on all of them above. So we'll just bullet point them out for you. I think leverage the data for all your decisions and to get buy-in. I think that we all get that gut inclination that we should do something, or something isn't right. Go find the data to help you tell that story, because I think that helps people get behind it, and it makes people feel confident in the decisions that you're making. Don't be scared to fail. We talked about this at the beginning. I did not think I'd be doing anything that I'm doing today or yesterday. I thought I would write content forever. I love that. But stepping out and doing different things has helped me not only grow as a person, but I've learned so much about this industry, and I don't think I would have be able to do that if I was too timid to jump in feet first. And then build relationships. They're key, whether that's the people you're hiring or the people that you're working with, and be authentic even in the hard times. COVID taught us all that times can be really tough, whether that be supply chain constraints, or businesses being shut down, or people having personal issues because daycare or whatnot. And I think just like being human and having strong relationships with folks and talking through the hard stuff builds like strength in the good times.
Amen. Very, very well said. And you saying about building relationships reminds me, when I first got into this industry, Mark Olson from APG Castro, who's now retired, but one of his guiding principles was build relationships before you need them, right? Like just build a relationship to see how you can help somebody else, but it doesn't have to be like this person's going to be a client or a partner, or they're going to be able to do something for me. Just go and naturally help people. And if you never end up having some business other transaction with them, so be it, but just always go out and build those relationships. And I really like what you said. I'm hoping you expand upon a little bit more. Find data to help you tell the story, because there's an element of, where there is a gut feel that you do have to. It has to feel right. It can't all be data-based, but it can't all be gut feel either, right? It can't just, because then how could you communicate that to anybody? Well, it just feels like we should do this. Can you talk about maybe the practical application of finding that data to help you tell the story? I'm guessing it doesn't mean you need to put together an entire book or an extended PowerPoint presentation, but at least have some feedback or anecdotes or something, as opposed to just, it's what I'm thinking, it's what I'm feeling. Can you expand upon how you apply that principle?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's leveraging your in-house data using your tools that you can see, product movement or revenue movement or slip with things, and or leveraging your partners. We go to our suppliers and our channel partners all the time to say, what are you seeing out in the market? What are you seeing customers asking for? And using both their data and their anecdotes with our stuff to go make those decisions of how we need to evolve. Where's the market wanting us to invest in? Is there maybe financial tools are something that the channel needs? Okay, we're hearing that across multiple things. We're also seeing it in our numbers. Let's go invest in creating a program that will support them with that.
Yeah, and when you do that, it also has some humility that sometimes you go and say, wow, the data isn't what I expected. And so I'm going to have to modify, what I thought we should do, 100 miles an hour. Maybe we should do only 50 miles an hour because the data is telling us something different. So last question I have for you. Want to talk, you've done a great job integrating some experiences he had. Can you talk about maybe one standout experience that really shaped you as a leader? Like, what's one story you can tell us that's shaped you, you'll never forget from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, and it's interesting because an experience that I think early on, 2016 into my career in the channel business, EMV happened. And for folks who aren't in payments, you remember that from when you used to swipe your credit card to when you started to put your credit card into a terminal. And that was a guideline and a standard that basically went into effect. And if you didn't have that new device that took the inserting, you could be liable for any fraud or any transactions that were fraudulent. And so in true fashion, no one listened for the years and years leading up to it. And right when the deadline was about to hit, it went wild. And we literally had to work our warehouses like 24 hours a day, maybe 18, I think maybe was more like it than 24. But that experience from both watching leadership be there with the team, as well as watching the team be there and showing people how to do things was just, I learned more about everything about our business. And that those 2 or 3 weeks, they shut down the offices, and our owner at the time pulled up a whiteboard and said, here's 4 shifts, Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday. Put your name on it. And everyone, whether you were the CEO or you were the customer support rep, put their name on that board, and we all went and worked at the warehouse. And so there was this great feeling of feeling like everyone is in it together, and lead by example, lead by doing the work. Don't just say we have a problem, go and help solve the problem. But we also learned a ton from the associates who worked every day in the warehouse, who then had to train all of us how to do all these things, whether it be configuring a payment device or picking off the shelf or QAing. I did shipping. I really liked shipping. We just learned a ton from each other. And I think that often in leadership, you get caught up in the top doing the strategy. And sometimes you got to go down and figure out the day-to-day to see where the problems or where you should invest, because you're there in the kind of in the trenches with them. And so that experience, maybe what got me to stick around after that first year. And I would go back and do that. I tell everyone they should go work a week at the warehouse because they'll learn a ton. And so I just really enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, when I first got into, I had management, then I moved on to company leadership. And once I moved into that role, my boss told me there's a gap between how the business operates and how you perceive it operating. Your job is to minimize that gap, right? That you're never going to know exactly what's going on in every corner of the business, but the closer you get to it, the better you'll be able to run the business, because it's based on what you brought up earlier, the facts of it. That's kind of what it sounds like that experience did for you, right? You got to see firsthand, get your hands dirty, right? Bang your elbows as you're, working, whatever shift that you have to pull your weight. Is that kind of the lesson that you took away from that?
Totally, yeah. That you're never too good to do anything. And I think I've seen that throughout my career, whether it be a VP helping me at a trade show because we're running behind, or in my nonprofit days, our executive director would be picking up trash at an event with me because, the streets need to be cleaned after it. And so I just think I really value leaders who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. And I want to be that kind of leader. I don't want to ever feel like my team doesn't think I'm going to jump in there and do it with them and solve the problems together.
Amen. Yeah, happy to help wherever you're needed. So last thing I have for you, we're almost at time, but I want to make sure I also mention, I don't want to mention that at the outset because it put extra pressure on you, Heather, but you are a graduate of the RSPA's Leading Conversations boot camp. And that's part of why you're on stage at RetailNOW, is a training program that the RSPA put together for women in the industry, giving them the opportunity to learn additional skills or build out whatever skills they have in terms of leading different discussions as well. So that was an all voluntary thing. So I guess, can you talk about why you volunteered to do that, and hopefully how that is helping you in your career in terms of leading conversations? Because you've done great today. Again, I didn't want to put pressure on you at the outset, but everybody's clearly heard and goes, wow, Heather knows she's able to do great in terms of a conversation like this. So I guess talk about that boot camp, why you signed up for it, and how important it is to be able to lead conversations externally and internally.
Yeah, I signed up for it because everything I've done with the RSPA has taught me something new. And so I'm always down to continue my learning. And you guys have proven over the many events and activities I participate that you guys put thought into it and you make sure that it's not just a waste of time. It was actually really awesome because it was very digestible. The assignments and the weekly coursework was not overwhelming. We all want to do extra things to grow, but we also have jobs. And so
Hmm.
sometimes when you do these programs, you're like, oh, when am I going to fit this all in? And so you and Kathy did an excellent job with the format of it. And I think I walked away with lots of tips. I already knew you were paper trick because you had taught me that um, when you did a panel for a partner conference I was a part of. But I think just stopping and thinking about all the questions that you're gonna be a part of, and not just like writing out answers, but figuring out how to like give yourself some notes to hit on either questions you're gonna ask or questions you're gonna answer were big for me. And I just love being a part of things where you have people of all different skill sets learning together, and you can teach each other new tips and tricks. And so it was a great program. I recommend it to anyone who wants to sign up for the next one. And I don't know when it is, but Jim, I'm sure you do.
We don't have the exact dates yet, but it is going to be in 2024, session number 2 of Leading Conversations. And for everybody watching our YouTube channel, the trick that the paper trick that Heather was talking about is I always keep this in my pocket. For those who are listening on the audio only version, you basically set up your notes in 2 columns. You fold the thing into quarters. You keep it in your pocket, and that way, when you're going up on stage, either give a presentation or to moderate a panel, you have something to refer to, and you can go on the stage with confidence because you're like, I can read, right? And so the worst thing that's going to happen is I can pull my notes out and I'm able to catch up there. It might not be the best presentation, but it's better than totally blowing it on stage there. So, and I guess part of it is building the skills, building the confidence. Was you got to have a lot of cycles in those workshops that we did. You got to see a lot of other people as well do that. So yeah, Kathy Meter, our VP of Educational Services, she deserves tons of credit for making that happen. And you and all the other graduates really made it a good, positive discussion. Everybody rolled up their sleeves and was ready to jump in.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks so much for having that.
Yeah, well, you guys did such a great job. We're going to do it again. So, all right, well, that does it for this episode of The Trusted Advisor. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. Be sure to subscribe to the RSP YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. And be sure, once again, final reminder, register for RetailNOW 2024, July 20th through 30th in Las Vegas, featuring a diverse high-tech expo hall, plenty of networking opportunities, and several great education sessions, including Elevate and Innovate, essential tools for empowering your retail technology solution business. Before we go, big thanks again to Heather Philpott for sharing your wisdom with us today. Thanks also to RSP Marketing Director Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSP is to accelerate the success of our members in the retail technology ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, everybody.